Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Let me tell you about the moment my marriage shattered, and how I didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't even flinch. I just walked away. She didn't know I was in the room. I had gotten home early from a training seminar across town. I wasn't supposed to be back until the next morning, and I thought I'd surprise her. Instead, she surprised me, just not in the way any man wants. I slipped through the back door because I didn't want to wake her if she was asleep. The hallway light was off, but her voice, it carried. She was on the phone in the living room, pacing. I paused when I heard her say, "No, he's not home. He's never home. Honestly, he's like a sad ghost, always floating around, but never really there." I didn't breathe. I just stood behind the corner, the shadow of a man who apparently no longer existed in his own house. Then came the part that rewrote everything I thought I knew about my marriage. She laughed and said, "It's like, I married oatmeal. He's not bad, but I'm starving for something with flavor." Oatmeal. That word hit me harder than any slap could have. She didn't call me cruel or heartless. She called me bland, forgettable, something you tolerate until you find something better. She kept talking. She said she wasn't sure how long she could keep pretending, that she felt alive with the other guy, that maybe it was time she stopped lying to herself. I stood there, wearing the same wrinkled dress shirt I wore to that seminar, the one she never even noticed I had pressed the night before. I looked down at the hotel keycard still in my hand. Room 413. I'd never go back there. I didn't even want to go back here. She turned toward the hallway suddenly. I backed up instinctively, heart thudding. But she didn't see me. She didn't hear me. She just kept talking. And I didn't make a sound. I walked out the front door without saying a word. I didn't slam it. I didn't take anything with me. Just my phone. Just my silence. She didn't even realize I'd heard every word. And I've never returned to that house since. I wandered around that night like I was underwater. I didn't even go far. Just drove in circles around the neighborhood with the windows down. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink much. I kept hearing her words echo over and over again, like a cruel melody stuck on repeat. I married oatmeal. Maybe some men would have marched back in and confronted her right then and there. Maybe they would have yelled, demanded answers, called the other guy, thrown plates, threatened divorce. But I didn't. I didn't even go back for socks. That might sound weak, but honestly, I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I just didn't want to exist in that moment anymore. Around 3 a.m., I pulled into a 24-hour gas station. The clerk didn't even look up. I grabbed a granola bar, some orange juice, and stood by the counter longer than I needed to. It felt strange being somewhere so normal while my world had just collapsed. I paid in cash like a ghost buying snacks and sat on the curb outside. That was my bed for the night. In the morning, I called in sick. I told them I had a stomach thing. Technically, I wasn't lying. It felt like my insides were folding in on themselves. That whole day, I avoided people. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents. Not my brother. Not even Dean, my closest friend since 6th grade. I didn't want to explain something I didn't understand myself. Because here's the thing. She didn't cheat on me with actions. Not that I could prove, at least. But what she said on that phone call, that was betrayal. The kind that doesn't show up on camera but still rots you from the inside. She texted me at noon. "Hey, where are you? Did you leave for the seminar again?" I stared at the screen for 5 full minutes before locking it without replying. The next message came an hour later. "Silas? Are you okay?" Still nothing from me. I wouldn't. Because in her mind, I was still that harmless, dependable background character in her story, always floating around, never causing drama. And the truth was, she was right. That's exactly who I'd become. So I made a choice. I checked into a short-term rental on the edge of town, one of those converted garage apartments listed on an app. The walls were thin. The water pressure was terrible. But it was mine, and she didn't know where it was. That night, I lay on a lumpy mattress listening to someone's dog bark through the wall. I looked at the ceiling fan above me and asked the question that had been forming ever since I walked out of that house. What if I never went back? 2 days passed before she called me. Not texted, actually called. I was sitting on a wooden stool in the kitchenette of the garage apartment, staring at a bowl of cereal that had gone soggy in minutes. The screen lit up with her name. For a second, I considered answering. Just to hear her voice, maybe. But then I remembered how full of life her voice sounded. Not with me, but with him. So I let it ring. Then ring again. Then silence. After that, the text changed tone. Silas, this isn't funny. Can you please tell me where you are? I'm starting to get scared. I read them all. Reread them, even. And every time I hovered over the reply button, something in me froze. Because the truth was, I didn't want her scared. But I also didn't want her comfortable. Not anymore. By the third day, she'd called my brother. I knew, because he left a voicemail in that awkward, half-concerned tone guys use when they're not sure how emotional they're allowed to be. Hey, Loretta said she can't find you. You good? Call me back or text. Or don't. I dunno, man. I didn't respond to him either. Not yet. Because something strange was happening. For the first time in years I felt still. Not better. Not stronger. But still. Like I was watching the world through glass and finally not trying to fix everything on the other side. The following evening, I made the mistake of checking her social media. She had posted a photo of the backyard, our backyard, with some vague caption about quiet evenings and missing pieces. It made me sick. Not because she missed me, but because she had the audacity to present herself as someone mourning. Someone heartbroken. I was still gone, and she was playing for sympathy on the internet. That night I didn't sleep. I just lay in the dark, thinking about all the times I excused her coldness. All the little ways she let me shrink inside the marriage while convincing me it was normal. That this was just how long-term relationships work. That not everyone gets butterflies forever. And yet she laughed like a teenager on that call. With someone else. In the morning, I left the apartment and took a long walk down to the edge of a wooded trail. I don't know what I was looking for. Peace, maybe. But instead, I found clarity. I realized I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to ruin her life. I just didn't want to be in it anymore. A week went by. 7 full days since I walked out the front door without saying a word. She still hadn't found me. Not through texts. Not through calls. Not even through the people who were supposed to know me best. I wasn't hiding brilliantly, I just wasn't being obvious. And I think that's what scared her the most. Because she was used to me being predictable. Being there. Her steady little shadow. On the 8th day, I caved and texted her back. Just one sentence. You might want to check the attic. That was it. No greeting. No explanation. No apology. I turned off my phone after sending it. Not airplane mode. Not do not disturb. I literally powered it off and dropped it in the kitchen drawer like a forgotten spoon. Then I sat in silence and waited, knowing exactly what she'd find. For years ago, I had packed a box labeled, in case I ever forget. Back then, I thought it was romantic, a time capsule of our love. It held things like the movie stub from our first date, a pressed daisy from a hiking trip, and a tiny note she wrote me during our second Christmas together that simply said, "You're the kindest man I've ever known." I'd added to the box slowly over the years. But somewhere after our 9th anniversary, the additions stopped. The love notes were replaced with silent dinners. The laughter turned into sighs. And I left the box where it belonged, collecting dust above our heads. But the last thing I placed inside? That would be her undoing. A month before I left, I had printed the phone bill from our shared plan. Not the whole thing, just the parts that mattered. Highlighted call logs. Text message frequencies. Numbers I didn't recognize. I did the math. Over 11 hours of calls to the same unknown number in a single week. Hundreds of texts. And a few suspicious 2 a.m. timestamps. I never confronted her. I just folded the pages and slipped them between the old love letters. So when I told her to check the attic, I knew exactly what would happen. I imagined her pulling the box down with trembling hands, expecting nostalgia, getting evidence, proof that I had known all along even when I played dumb, proof that I had given her the chance to tell the truth and she hadn't. I didn't do it to humiliate her. I did it so she'd stop pretending. That night, I turned my phone back on. One new message. It was from her. Just 3 words. You were listening. And for once, I didn't feel like the invisible one. The morning after her text, I opened the door to find a small box on the welcome mat of the rental. No note. No knock. Just the box sitting there like a silent apology or maybe a warning. I stood there staring at it for what felt like forever, wondering if this was her version of closure or the start of another manipulation. The garage unit didn't even have a peephole, so I had no idea how long she'd been standing out there before dropping it off. I brought it inside and sat at the little table I now used for everything. Eating, thinking, avoiding. The box wasn't taped shut, just loosely folded. Inside, I found 4 things. First, the wedding band I had slipped on her finger 13 years ago, still faintly scratched from the time she dropped it down the garbage disposal and laughed it off like it was nothing. Second, a stack of printed photos. Us at the beach, her kissing my cheek. A blurry one of me asleep on the couch with her feet in my lap. She had circled that one in red pen and written, "This was the last time I remember feeling safe." Third, a necklace I'd never seen before. Elegant, not her style. Still had the store tag inside the box. I didn't need a receipt to know who bought it for her. And finally, a torn sheet of notebook paper. On it, in rushed handwriting, "It was never supposed to go that far. You stopped looking at me like I mattered. I needed to feel seen again. But you were always kind. Always good. I just didn't know how to be that with you anymore." There it was. The confession. Half-baked and foggy, but enough to say it out loud. She hadn't denied it. She hadn't defended it. She just offered it. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel strong. Honestly, I felt tired. My hands shook a little as I folded the note and set it aside. I could have texted her back. I could have asked questions, demanded answers. But what would have been the point? You don't keep dissecting something that's already stopped breathing. Instead, I stood up, picked up the necklace, walked outside, and dropped it straight into the dumpster beside the building. I watched it land with a soft clink, swallowed by other people's trash, and realized that's exactly where it belonged. Not her, not even the affair, but the version of me that allowed myself to be forgotten in plain sight. That's what I was finally throwing away, and I didn't look back. I guess the silence became too loud for her, because she didn't just stop at the box. 2 days later, the first visitor came knocking. It was her mother, Carol. Of all people. I had just made a burnt grilled cheese and was halfway through forcing it down when I heard the knock. I looked through the window and froze. She stood there with a casserole dish in her hands, like this was some kind of sad sitcom intervention. I opened the door, not out of politeness, but out of sheer disbelief. She didn't say hello, just held the dish out to me and muttered, "Chicken and rice. I know you like it." Then she looked over my shoulder, eyes scanning the cramped space behind me. "She's a fool, Silas." I didn't know what to say. I hadn't spoken to Carol in months. She and Loretta weren't exactly close, but they shared that strange bond some mothers and daughters have, where disappointment was expressed only in eye rolls and whine. I took the dish and muttered a half-hearted thanks. Before I could retreat, she said something that stopped me cold. "You don't know this, but I warned her. Years ago, when she started pulling away from you. I told her, don't mistake quiet for weakness." I met her eyes for the first time. She looked tired. Not angry, not embarrassed, just tired. "She wouldn't listen," Carol continued. "She said you'd always be there, that you wouldn't leave even if she gave you every reason to." I wanted to cry, not because she was right, but because I had once believed the same thing. That my presence was permanent. That being the reliable one meant something. But even concrete cracks when it's weathered long enough. After she left, I placed the untouched casserole in the fridge and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Then came Dean, my best friend. He texted me, then showed up the next evening with a six-pack and that awkward man-hug thing we hadn't done since college. We sat outside on the stairs, not saying much at first. Then he just came out with it. "She told me, man, about the guy. Said it didn't get physical, but that's a lie. You know that, right?" I nodded. Dean cracked open a beer. You don't have to forgive her. But you also don't have to carry it around like it was your fault. It was the first time anyone had said that out loud. And I think it broke something open in me. Not anger. Not sorrow. Just space. Room to start rebuilding whatever pieces of me I hadn't completely lost in the years I spent loving someone who didn't see me. It was the 10th day since I left when she finally showed up in person. I was sitting on the curb outside the rental, folding the same receipt over and over in my hands like a nervous habit. I didn't see her car pull up, didn't even hear the door close, until her shadow stretched across the sidewalk in front of me. I looked up and there she was, Loretta, in a gray hoodie and jeans, no makeup, her hair pulled back like she'd given up on pretending. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us had grown so wide I wasn't sure it could be crossed. She knelt down slowly, sitting a few feet away, just far enough to feel like a stranger. I thought you were dead, she said quietly. And I thought I'd be relieved. But I wasn't. Panicked. Because if you were dead, I couldn't fix any of it. I didn't respond. She pulled something from her hoodie pocket. A small, folded envelope. I wrote you a letter, she added. But I'll read it out loud, in case you never open it. I wanted to walk away, but I didn't. Maybe part of me needed to hear it, even if it came too late. She unfolded the page, her hands trembling. Her voice was rough, like she hadn't spoken honestly in years. I didn't cheat because you were awful. You weren't. You were calm, gentle, safe. I cheated because I thought I'd lost myself somewhere in the safety. I wanted chaos again. I wanted to feel like someone chose me, not just stayed with me because it was routine. But now I see you weren't just staying. You were showing up for me every day. And I spat on that. She wiped at her eyes, then laughed bitterly. And now I get it. You left without a word. Because you didn't need to scream to mean it. I looked away. My chest felt hollow. Not because I forgave her, but because I had once loved her so deeply I'd have done anything to make her feel chosen. She placed the envelope beside me. I'm going to the house for the weekend. Alone. If you want to talk, really talk, I'll be there. If not, I'll know. And then she left. Just like that. She didn't beg. She didn't plead. But I could tell this was her final move. Her last offer. And now the choice was mine. I didn't go to the house that weekend. Not immediately. I let Saturday come and go. Spent the evening sitting on the floor of the rental, rereading her letter until the paper started to wear thin at the folds. Sunday morning, I made myself coffee and drank it slowly, staring out the window as rain tapped against the glass like it was waiting for an answer too. I hadn't forgiven her. Not entirely. But I realized that day that I didn't want to keep carrying around the version of myself who never got a voice. So just before sunset, I drove to the house. I half expected it to feel like an ambush, like she'd be standing on the porch rehearsing some grand speech. But instead, I found the lights low, music playing softly inside, and her curled up on the couch under a blanket with a cup of tea. She didn't leap up. She didn't cry. She just looked at me like I wasn't a ghost anymore. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. I almost didn't, I replied. But I figured. I deserved to be heard. And I talked. Really talked. I told her how invisible I had felt for years. How much it hurt to realize I had become more habit than husband. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I simply laid out the pieces of the life we'd shattered together and asked if she was willing to rebuild it. Not as a favor, not out of guilt, but with intention. And for the first time in years, she didn't interrupt. She didn't defend herself. She just listened. When I finished, she whispered, "Then let me start with one brick. It's been 3 months since that night. We're in counseling. It's not easy. Some days, I still look at her and wonder how she let it get that far. But other days, I catch her watching me make coffee and smiling. Not out of guilt, but with something resembling love again. I'm not naive anymore. We're not who we were. But maybe, just maybe, we're building something better than what we pretended to have for years. And if not, then at least I finally remembered what it feels like to be seen. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever experienced a moment where silence spoke louder than words, Or when you chose peace instead of shouting? Share it in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You're watching Reddit Confessions. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories just like this one.